An interesting thing is that if, as we have it, Marcion had this early written document of the Gospel, life of Jesus, and he's so praising Paul's writings and has a set of such, albeit not with certain things that the Roman Church may have in latter centuries added and changed and so on. But do you see, unless you were not very bright, which is hardly likely to be the case, he'd notice that the current Paul's letters as we have them are not consistent with the story of Jesus, even that we have now, which may well have been doctored by the Roman Church. And we think it has, added to and so on. In other words, what Marcion and perhaps his financed writers, after all, he was I think a fairly well-off guy, ready to fund the church, including the one in Rome as it was at the time when he was. His level of competence and that of his team, so to speak, would have realised, had the Pauline letters been as we receive them, and possibly even as the Gospel as we have it now, leave alone the one that he had put together in written form, shall we say, his team, they realise what story to put together in harmony with Paul was to be the story. In other words, saying that the first written gospel that we have reference of, Marcion's, would have written to fit the letters of Paul that they had at that time. And of course Marcion's view is that Paul is the Gnostic of Gnostics, and so taken with such, he would make sure that if he were putting the gospel together, and perhaps that is the case, that it was consistent with the Pauline view that he had, the letters as he had, and not necessarily what we have now, of course. I mean, quite simply, he wouldn't have put together a gospel that was inconsistent with the letters. Of course, what the Roman Church in subsequent centuries added to the Pauline letters may not be consistent within now what is received as, or was received anyway, as Pauline. We've just got a confusion, and a bigger confusion with the edited version of the gospel that we have as well. Thank you, Heavenly Dad.